Yeah, yeah, you don't want to, yeah.
Good morning. We have kids in the room. Vaccine. We're grateful that we're starting to return to normal. Welcome everyone in the room and everyone watching online. I got a repetitive refrain that we begin because what we're doing here is training to be the safety team for when we open up to the general public, and we need to have the safety measures in place just for whoever might walk through the doors. And so we're inviting you as part of the safety team to be willing to wear masks and encourage others to do so, to practice appropriate social distancing. And you'll see we have these kind of pull toys that you can use. They're not fixed. You can move them around to set whatever feels like appropriate distances for you and establish your personal space and be respectful of people's personal space. We're not singing right now because even though the CDC doesn't warn against it, it's because religious groups lobbied to have that taken out of the CDC guidance. So we're going to do what's safe first. After the service, you can go to the card table and write cards to people who are sort of outreach and carrying cards to folks. Also, if you're ever during the winter feeling not well, we invite you to watch online. And we're grateful that we have invested all this technology that allows us to have services both online and in person. So as a safety team, are you ready to practice those things? Yes. All right, we will need your help in the weeks to come. Without further ado, and without any other announcements, I believe, we will start with the ringing of the chime.
Consider this an invitation to you, yes, you, with all your happiness and your burdens and your hopes and regrets, an invitation if you feel good today, an invitation if you do not. If you are aching, and there are so many ways to ache, whoever you are, however you are, wherever you are, this is an invitation to peace. Peace in your heart, and peace in your heart, and with every breath, peace in your heart. Maybe your heart is heavy today, or maybe your heart is hardened. Maybe it's troubled, and peace can take up residence only in a small little corner, only on the edge, with all that's going on in the world. Ni modo. It doesn't matter. All that you need for a deep and comfortable peace to grow lies within you. Once it is in your heart, let it spread into your life. Let it pour forth from your life into the world. And once it is in the world, let it shine upon all beings. The words of the poet Angela Herrera. Welcome this morning. Come, let us worship together.
Good morning. It is so good to be gathered here together, both in person and from home, all as one community of faith. I am so glad to be here with you this morning. And I have a story to share with you that is adapted from one written by Richard Paul Evans. And it begins in a kingdom far away. And this is a kingdom that had once been a great kingdom. Imagine it, if you will. But times had changed, hard times had come, and it had become a very poor kingdom, and things were in disrepair. The people were hungry, the great buildings and cathedrals and castles were crumbling. Things looked kind of shabby. Imagine that kingdom. And the king of that kingdom himself was, as the king of a poor and hard times kingdom, was himself rather poor and on hard times in his crumbling castle. But one day there was a knock on the great door, and the king went to answer it, and there was an old man carrying a curious cylindrical case and a long walking stick. And the king welcomed him in, and the man said, I'm wondering if you would help give me lodging for the night. I am traveling through. Would I be able to stay here? And the king said, well, you're welcome to stay, but as you can see, I don't have much. All the rooms are kind of drafty. Things are kind of falling down. We were once a great kingdom, but that was long ago. And the man said, well, why don't you change back? What do you think the king said? He said, we have hoped for so many years that things would get better, but they don't. They haven't. Things are never going to change. Well, the old man said, in the morning, after I have slept, I will show you what it is you are lacking. And the king said, we're lacking so many things. What do you mean, the thing that we're lacking? And the man said, oh no, really it's just one thing. I will tell you tomorrow. And so the next morning, the old man took the king and they walked out onto one of the balconies where they could see the land before them. And the old man opened his case and he took out a beautiful spyglass. And he handed it to the king, and the king looked through it, and he was amazed by what he saw. I wonder if anybody can guess what he saw. Everywhere he looked, he saw his kingdom, but it was completely different. Everything was overflowing with bounty. The fields he saw were growing so much good food. The cathedral was beautiful and well repaired. All the houses, even the small ones, looked so cozy and warm and well taken care of. And everywhere he saw his people, the people he knew, and they looked happy and content. But when he took the spyglass down from his eye, what happened? Any ideas? It was back the way it was. And he said, well, this is no good. Everything's just back. Nothing has changed. And the old man said, yes, this spyglass shows you what could be. You have to change it yourself. So now you have seen what is possible. Now go and make it so. And so the king began to travel around his land. He came to an overgrown garden that was choked with weeds, and there were people standing around talking outside the gates of the garden while their children played in the dirt. And he asked them, why doesn't anybody take care of this garden? And they said, it's no use. And the king, what do you think he did? I bet you can guess. He handed one of them the spyglass and said, look and see what could be. And that person looked through it and saw a beautiful, well-kept garden with things growing in their place. It was so lovely. And he handed it to the next person, and each one of them looked through it. But then, as the king did, when they took it away from their eyes and saw that it was all overgrown again, they thought, well, that's a pretty toy, but it's useless. But the king said, "Watch." And he went into the garden and he began to pull up weeds with his hands. And one by one, the people who were there joined him. And before too long, they had cleared a lovely little corner of the garden and had found a beautiful statue that nobody remembered was there because it was so overgrown. And the king left them saying, "You have seen what is possible, now make it so." And for a long time, he continued traveling around his land. Everywhere he went, he gave the spyglass to people. He showed them what was possible, and they began to make changes. And after a while, he began to realize that he didn't need the spyglass anymore, that people had learned how to see what was possible for themselves. And that fall, what do you think happened? There was a bountiful harvest. And people were repairing their buildings. A new cathedral was being built. And they had learned that not just empty hope, but that they themselves were the change that was needed. And forevermore, the king kept that spyglass nearby just in case, but I've heard that he never had to pull it out again. Thank you.
Well, good morning. Today, I have decided not to fight the microphone. I have my own. This next reading was written for the 2017 GA Memorial Service in honor of the former moderator, Jim Kay. May I remember in this tender moment that love is my guide, always shepherding me toward ways of openness and compassion. I have what I need, really, with love at my side, above me, below me, in front of me, behind me, inside every cell of me, love infused everywhere. Just when the weight of the world I inhabit threatens to drop me in place and press my hope down into ground beneath me, love invites me to rest for a gentle while and leads the center of my soul to the quiet, still, restoring waters nearby. Somehow, I had not noticed. And so love quietly sets me once again on its tender and demanding path. And even when the walls close around me and the cries of death echo throughout untold corners, gripping my heart with fear and sadness, I know that all will be well, that I will be well. When love whispers near to me, glints at the corner of my eye, and rest with gentle and persistent invitation upon my shoulders. Yes, love blesses me. And even as the sources and symbols of my pain look on, love blesses me from its infinite well, and I turn and I notice that goodness and kindness and grace follow me wherever, everywhere I go. I live in the house of love, and love that will not let me go. I live in the house of love, and always will. This new rendition of the Psalms 23 is for modern day use, and I hope that we know, because in our joys and concerns, we remember that love always surrounds us, inside of us, infinite. And so let us say together, joy. 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 Oh gosh, you sound the way I felt when I got up this morning. Can I hear another joy? Joy. Thank you. Yes, yes. Because at times it's hard to remember that love, that joy. But when you have a new birth in the family, when you have new people come to visit, faces you haven't seen before, when you see people you have seen in a long time, and know that people are watching through us all, we are filled with joy and love. Remember this in your sadness, in your depression, in your grief. Know that you're surrounded by love.
We are the ones, we are the ones, we've been waiting. We are the ones, we are the ones, we've been waiting. We are the ones, we are the ones, we've been waiting. We are the ones, we are the ones, we've been waiting. We are the ones, we are the ones, we've been waiting. We are the ones, we are the ones, we've been waiting. We are the ones, we are the ones, we've been waiting. We are the ones, we are the ones, we've been waiting for. We are the ones, we are the ones, we've been waiting for. We are the ones, we are the ones, we've been waiting for. We are the ones, we are the ones, we've been waiting for. We are the ones, we are the ones, we've been waiting for. We are the ones, we are the ones, we've been waiting. We are the ones, we are the ones, we've been waiting.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us here at Tennessee Valley Unitarian Universalist Church. My name is Claudia Presley, and I am the Director of Finance and Administration here. And today is a Share the Plate Sunday. What that means for those of you that haven't been here before or haven't been watching us online, or maybe have just forgotten, is that all offerings and contributions that come in today that are not marked as a pledge will be split between our Share the Plate organization and the general operating fund of TVUUC. Today's organization is KETA, Knoxville Immigrant Transportation Assistance. And Polly Murphy will be here in just a minute to give you some information about what they do and how they do it. But before that, let me tell you the practical ways of how you can give. If you're in the sanctuary today, there are offering baskets on either end of the what used to be the choir railing here behind me. We've got to come up with what that's called now. But anyway, there are offering baskets there. You're welcome to put your cash or your checks in there. If you would like to, there is a giving kiosk out in the lobby where you can swipe your debit card or your credit card and just select Share the Plate, and that will that contribution will go to the Share the Plate fund. If you are giving online today, and you're welcome to do that from in the sanctuary, or if you're watching online, you can text give to the number 73256, type in TVUUC and the amount that you would like to give, or you can go to our website, tvuuc.org/give, and you can give that way. You can also give through your Realm account if you are a member and have a Realm account. So once again, thank you for being with us. Polly's going to come now and give you a little more information about KETA. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Polly Murphy. I'm a member of TVUC and also been a number of years with KETA. And how we came about is when there were asylum seekers, and they were all in detention centers down in Texas and in Arizona, and they came through on the Greyhound buses through Knoxville to await for their hearing with family and friends. They came, just put on buses, and they were down in South America, Central America, so there were no clothes. They had short sleeve shirts, flip-flops, etc. on. And we tried, when we found this out, we met 4 buses a day, and we supply food, translation help, medicine, blankets, diapers, clothes. Well, this changed when Trump came in office. There were people in cages, and he set up all the news about everybody not being taken care of. So he set up a policy where nobody came into this country, and they stayed in Mexico. And it was Remain in Mexico policy. President Biden promised to change this and suspended this by signing it in his first day of office. About a little over a week ago, on the news, you heard that there was a court order, and it was in Texas and Missouri, that put this policy back in place. President Biden is trying to fight this actively and allow people back in this country. But where does that leave KETA now? Yes, there are fewer coming through till this changes again, but there's still about more than 1,000 in the detention centers down in Arizona and Texas now. They're coming through. And it's been agreed that unaccompanied children, pregnant women, physically, mentally ill people, older people, and members of LGBTQ community will be exempt and will come through in the U.S. We are still meeting 1 bus a day, and we're supplying all the supplies that we talked about. And we'll continue to carry on with this. And we'll be geared up to increase it as more people are coming through, travelers are coming through. TVUC has supported this effort for a number of years, and we really appreciate it. And we thank you so much, now and in the future. Thank you again.
Churches often have highly visible symbols that send a spiritual message. Cathedrals have towers and spires, flying buttresses and stained glass windows, compelling statuary and ornate decorations. And when turning off Kingston Pike to come to the Tennessee Valley Unitarian Universalist Church, one of the first things you notice about our building is that we have a big orange porta potty in our parking lot. Now, I mention this because I've been getting some emails this week from some people who are suggesting that this might not be the right aesthetic for our faith. That having a big orange porta potty might not be the visual effect we are looking for to tie together the architectural vision of our congregation. Point well taken. These emails do raise very valid concerns. However, there is a way to look at that porta potty as a symbol for a spiritual reality. For that outward and visible symbol reminds us that we are reinvesting in our faith by reinvesting in our building. For we are reinvesting in a new roof for this building. And I am grateful for the Building and Grounds Committee and for all the hard work they have done to renew and renovate this 23-year-old building. In this way, the big orange porta potty is a symbol of hope, an outward and visible sign of the renovation of our building that can serve as a harbinger of the inward and invisible renovation of our spirit. We are entering the season of Advent, and as we do so, we are surrounded by outward symbols that come from many different religions and cultural traditions. The holly and the ivy, the mistletoe and the evergreen tree, the light of Advent candles and Hanukkah candles and Yule log candles and Kwanzaa candles and more, all suggest that this is a season of winter darkness in which we are awaiting the dawn of new light. We often hear the words of the prophet Isaiah this time of year, who said, "The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who have dwelt in the land of darkness, on them light has shone." This time of year, people of all faiths are looking for light. People of all places and nations are looking for light. Today in our country, we are mindful that there are cities and towns and communities that have been devastated by the tornadoes that passed through our country. There are people who are mourning lost loved ones. There are communities where the power is out and where the people are literally awaiting light. And yet, even under normal circumstances, this is not an easy time of year for everyone. There are those who this time of year experience seasonal affective disorder. The acronym is SAD, appropriately so. There are those who are having a hard time putting up Christmas or holiday decorations, going through the motions of traditional celebrations. There are those grieving lost loved ones who will not be at holiday gatherings this year, or mourning losses of other kinds. In those years where we feel like it is difficult to redecorate the home with festive lights, we can heed the wisdom of the mystics of all the great world religions who tell us to go inward toward the light, to go within for the light. A common theme across the lines of every faith is that outward ritual should speak to our inner lives. It must never become a rote ritual, dull ritual, habit, conformity, empty tradition. We must continually insist that the outward is a manifestation of the revitalized inner life. In other words, we can look upwards toward the towers and the spires and the flying buttresses, but we need to remember that the highest is within us. The highest is within us. And divinity doesn't come to us, it comes through us. Last Sunday, we had story time and activities out on the front lawn, and some of our young people came and made luminaria. And so they were cutting and punching, and a luminaria is you take a bag, you can decorate it and punch holes in it, and then you fill the bottom with sand or some other heavy substance, and you can put a candle in it and light that candle. And a luminaria can stand alone, a light in darkness alone, or it can be put together with others, as we have done on Christmas Eve, where we've lined our sidewalk with luminaria illuminating the night. And I mentioned this children's arts and crafts project for a reason, because this is the time of year when we need to remember it is very important that we acknowledge that we are luminaria. We are luminaria. We are illuminated from the inside. The novelist and poet and playwright Alice Walker grew up in Eatonton, Georgia, which is not too far away from where some of my family live. She's the author of The Color Purple, and she's written an interesting book called We Are the Ones We've Been Waiting For, Inner Light in a Time of Darkness. And she takes those words from the poet June Jordan, we are the ones we've been waiting for, words that have been set to music by the music group Sweet Honey in the Rock, that has connections to All Souls Unitarian Church in Washington, D.C., where Issei Barnwell helped start the Jubilee Singers, and we heard that song today. In her book, Alice Walker shares the idea, and these are her words, that we are guided by an inner light, a compass we can steer by as we set across the lengthening darkness. It comes from the simple belief and understanding that what one is feeling and doing is right, that it is right to protect rather than terrorize others, right to feed people rather than to withhold food and medicine, right to want the freedom and joyful existence of all humankind, right to want the freedom and joy of all creatures that exist already or that might come into existence. Walker doesn't say this in the book, but she knows from experience not everyone sees that light within all people, because she grew up in Eatonton, Georgia, when that was a segregated city with segregated schools and segregated movie theaters and segregated accommodations. And she knows that white supremacy culture does not acknowledge or respect the divine spark in every person. Alice Walker practices Buddhist meditation, but she is quick to say that Buddha was not a Buddhist, and Jesus was not a Christian. But illuminated beings give off light. Illuminated beings give off light. Enlightened people shine in our world. And Buddha said to his disciples, "Be ye lamps unto yourselves." And Jesus said to his disciples, "You are the light of the world." And when you have a light, you don't hide it under a bushel. No, we all know that song. We put it on a lampstand so that it can shine and give light to all the people of the house. And this is the way we let our light shine before all humankind, before all of creation. The Unitarian Universalist Church has been heavily influenced by the social gospel tradition. And we are taught that change doesn't happen if we simply wait for it. Change doesn't happen if we wait for somebody else to do it. We are the ones. We are the ones that we are waiting for. We must be the change we want to see in our world and all around us. The theologians have a big word for that. It's called realized eschatology. John Coffey and I could talk about that. You're like, we could talk about realized eschatology. But what that means is as simple as a verse in a Christmas carol that I read in an old Unitarian hymnal. In the bleak midwinter, in this world of pain, when our hearts are open, Christ is born again. Meaning that we honor the babe in the manger when we assume our adult responsibilities to care and to have compassion and to love. This is not to say that outward rituals and outward traditions, all this talk about the inner life, doesn't mean outward symbols are unimportant. Ralph Waldo Emerson said that if you can have a direct experience with God, then set aside your books, set aside your rituals, set aside ceremonies, because direct experience is always better than a transcription of someone else's experience. And yet he added, but when the intervals of darkness come, as come they must, when the soul seeth not, when the sun is hid and the stars withdraw their shining, we repair to the lamps being those books and those scriptures and ceremonies. We repair to the lamps which were kindled by the rays to guide our steps to the east again, where dawn is. And that's what those Advent candles can do. They can guide us toward the east, where the sun rises. And the light of the candles and the light of the sun become one light. One light. Now, every holiday season we are mindful of those who are no longer living, who are no longer with us, and sometimes that's in fairly superficial ways. Like the news media will focus on celebrities that are no longer with us as we enter a new year. And one of those people who I didn't really know that well until there was some remembrance of him this year was Norm Macdonald, the comedian who was on Saturday Night Live, who did Weekend Update, the sort of fake news part of the show. Well, I didn't know that much about him, but I caught a clip of him where he was on a late-night talk show and he thanked the host for having him on the show, and he thanked the host for sending a limousine driver to come pick him up. And he said, I really like that guy. He told a good joke. And Norm Macdonald proceeded to tell the joke that the driver told him on national television. So this is the people's humor. This is the people's humor. The joke is about a moth that goes to a podiatrist's office. And it begins very appropriately. It begins with a moth going to a podiatrist's office where he says, Doc, I'm feeling really depressed. I'm feeling really down. I am very worried. I have a lot of anxiety. I have a lot of abandonment issues. I have a drinking problem, and I think I may have an eating disorder. And he continues to go on with a long list of problems. And finally, the podiatrist interrupts him and says, I think you made a mistake. I think you were meaning to go to a psychiatrist's office, but instead you went to a podiatrist's office. Why would you go to a podiatrist's office? And the moth said, because the light was on. I tell that story because I even as I was laughing at it, I thought it's powerful when someone who's no longer living can still make you laugh. Can still make you laugh. Something of our spirit, something of our personality, something of our sense of humor endures. I tell this story because I believe if we do our job right as a church, we will be a place where the light is on. And people can come to be comforted and consoled and to support each other. We can be a place where everyone feels illumination and where we can all be luminaria. So let me end by saying, if you don't like that big orange porta potty, if that's more of an eyesore than an icon, I understand where you're coming from. But the Buddhists would encourage us to think of it as a meditation on impermanence. For that porta potty will not be with us for all time. And once our roof is fixed and once our building is renewed, it will disappear. So it can be a meditation on the impermanence of all things and the natural order. So if you need a symbol that works better for you, maybe sometime this week you can wake up when it's still dark and go out and see one of those beautiful, gorgeous East Tennessee sunrises. And you can witness that moment when a big orange symbol comes over the horizon, a much more illuminating symbol that can remind us of the dawn of new light within us and all around us. So may it be.
Author Alice Walker says, "We are the ones we've been waiting for because we are able to see what is happening with much greater awareness than our parents or our grandparents or our ancestors could see. This does not mean that we believe that we can fix things, because we have seen the greater truth of how all oppression is connected and how pervasive and unrelenting it is. We have wanted all our lives to know that Earth, who has somehow obtained human beings as her custodians, was also capable of creating human beings who could minister to things. We are the ones we have been waiting for. So let us go forward out into the world and be the ones we have been waiting for."
Prophetic Church, the world awaits your liberating ministry. Go forward in the power of love, proclaim the truth that makes us free. And as our last act of worship, I invite you to turn and greet your neighbor.